Okay, hello there. Welcome to the final lesson of the Insight LSAT Mini LSAT Prep course. In today's brief lesson, we're not going to talk about any more content from the LSAT. No more game types, no more specific strategies for parts of the test. This lesson is about where you go from here. What do you do after this course to get yourself ready for test day? And there's two parts to the lesson. In the first part, beyond the course, we'll talk a little bit about how to set up a preparation schedule and how to structure your preparation from here until test day. How you should be drilling question types, how you should develop intuition for the various sections and for the LSAT as a whole. But this portion of the lesson is about preparing you by increasing your knowledge of the LSAT. In the second part of the lesson, beyond the test, we talk about LSAT preparation in a broader context. And specifically, we talk about how there are things other than working with practice tests that you can do to get yourself as a person ready for this test, and how you can do certain other things to increase the productivity of your preparation. Preparing for the LSAT is a serious undertaking, and you should consider it like you would if you were training for a marathon or working towards some other large goal. You have to put a lot of effort in it, you have to put your entire self into it, and Beyond the Test talks about how you can do that most effectively. Let's start with Beyond the Course. This is about where you go immediately after you finish this course, how you set up a system for preparation, how you set up a schedule, and I'll also give a little bit of advice for how you can get test ready. First thing, and very importantly, your LSAT preparation needs to be rooted in real LSAT practice tests. There is so much material out there. At the time of this video, there are almost 80 practice tests available for you to use in your preparation. There's no need to go to any other sources except for official LSAT tests, because as I've said before, to prepare for the LSAT is to practice the LSAT. You just want to be comfortable with this test. So the best way of doing that is by practicing and preparing with previously administered LSATs. Now, a few more details on how you should go about that. Since there is so much material out there, it's good to organize it for your preparation. What I suggest you do is you reserve your most recent tests for the end of your preparation. Take the last 10, 15 tests and put them aside, and they're going to be used when you're at the end of your preparation and you're just taking practice test after practice test and improving the total experience of taking an LSAT. The reason why you want to have the most recent ones for that is because they're going to be the most like the test that you're going to take, so it's better to have them practiced at the end. And on the flip side, take the oldest tests that you have, tests 10 and 11 and the ones that were given decades ago, and reserve those for the experimental sections that you slip into your other practice tests. And the reason we use older tests for that is because the LSAT was different 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. The way they asked questions was different. The sorts of games they had was different. And it's not so different that it's unrecognizable from the LSATs today, but it's different enough that it should give you that kind of weird feeling when you're taking it as a practice test that this is that something's not quite right here, and it can mimic an experimental section in that way. Now, once you've removed all the recent tests and you've removed all the oldest tests, I'd say like 10 to 15 on either side, take the remaining tests and split them in half. The easiest way to do this is just to take the odd numbered tests and the even number tests, and set aside half of these tests for drilling question types, for preparation, for untimed work, for general preparation. These are this will be the base of your problem sets that you can work through while preparing, and the other half you reserve and you leave untouched except for taking as full LSATs. So these are the ones that you will not practice anything on, but you'll sit down and take like a real test, and that's how you'll practice taking a real test. But when I did this, I set aside even numbered tests for drilling and for practice work, and odd numbered tests were the tests that I took as practice tests, full practice tests, 5 sections, timed, sitting there, taking the test in simulated conditions. And second, we've got this free Insight worksheet for you, and I think you should use it to develop your own individual LSAT Insight. This is, like we've said before, a central tenet to the Insight approach. It's important that you understand your relationship to the test, your strengths, your weaknesses, your tendencies. And this runs deeper than I'm good at the analytical reasoning section, I'm not that good at reading comprehension. It runs much deeper than that. Within the logical games section, within the reading comprehension sections, what are you good at? What are you not good at? Within specific question types, what sorts of answers do you fall for when you get it wrong? What sorts of answers do you always identify as right answers? There's an extreme level of depth of insight that you can achieve with regard to the way you take this test, and the better you understand it, the better you'll be able to prepare yourself. You'll know where to focus your time, and you'll know on test day what sort of questions are going to be more difficult for you, what are not, and you're going to be a much better, smarter test taker because you understand how you interact with the test and you understand how you need to take the test. Now there's more information on insightlsat.com/worksheet where you can actually get the worksheet. But basically, it's a neatly designed worksheet, and it's got graphs, and it's got places for you to put a lot of data after you take a practice test. You work through a practice test, and you put down all this different information. It's pretty clearly marked on there, and the graphs will show you your progress, and some of the other parts of the worksheet will show you some tendencies that you have, and it will give you a framework for improving. And it's kind of fun too. It's fun to see those graphs go up. It's fun to see how you're progressing and in which directions you're progressing. The Insight worksheet is really the backbone of your preparation and your preparation schedule because it helps you to keep track of what you're doing and guides you for the future. So definitely check it out. Moving right along, you do need a source of new LSAT knowledge besides what you're going to gain just from practice. So I suggest that you find a very good tutor and or use online resources to improve your knowledge of the LSAT's inner logic. There's a lot of information online. A lot of people have written explanations to LSAT questions, or they'll have guides for doing specific games, so really take a look out there and see what's available. Now, a tutor provides a different sort of benefit though, because while those explanations are written for any student, or those game demonstrations are just given for a general audience, a tutor can tailor the explanations and tailor the instruction to you and will work with you directly in this two-way street, right? You can be asking questions and they can be answered. There's a lot that's gained from that interaction. Also, your tutor is your LSAT expert. And remember we talked about developing intuition. A good tutor is going to have very strong LSAT intuition already. And there's a huge benefit from just interacting with a person who has a very, very strong LSAT intuition, because you'll see how that person thinks about the questions, how that person deals with questions, and that will begin to just naturally seep into you, and you will gain your intuition that way. The same way you can learn so much by just being around a master of a different skill, being around someone with a very strong hold on how the LSAT works will have natural rubbing off effects on you. Additionally, this tutor can bring to bear the intuition and the expertise on your analysis of your own work. So a tutor can go through a practice test that you do, pick apart all the different patterns that he or she sees, and help you to see what you're doing wrong and why. It can be hard at first, before you have a good sense of how the LSAT works, to see these patterns, but a practiced tutor who understands the test in and out can see more from your results than you would see up front, and then he or she can share that with you, and that can be extremely helpful. A good tutor is an extremely good pairing with the Insight worksheet, because there's the data and the tutor's expertise interprets and analyzes the data along with you. Generally speaking, a good tutor is going to be a coach that helps you in all different ways to prepare for the LSAT. A tutor can push you, pressing you on certain things that you might not have considered, pressing you to account for your right answers as well as your wrong answers, asking you why it is that you chose this right answer and making sure that you didn't just stumble upon it and missed an opportunity to learn there. And the tutor can keep you on track. It is important to sustain your LSAT preparation regularly and seriously from the moment you start until when you take that test. And if you should get a little lazy, it's nice to have that tutor who's in it with you, who is invested in your success and can push you to keep up with your preparation. So consider working with somebody to push yourself to be the absolute best LSAT test taker you can be. Next thing, do something LSAT related every day from now until you take that test. And it can be small. I know that people are busy. So even if you just do a handful of questions from a section, or you do one logic game, or you read through one passage, or you review a few problems that you did the day before, make sure the LSAT is at the forefront of your mind. It's an important part of your life during this preparation time. And also keep your mind in that mode. Keep yourself practiced. You will learn so much naturally from just doing LSAT stuff. You will form your brain for the LSAT. And that's why you don't want to just have one day a week on which you prepare, or a couple sessions per week that you prepare. You want to be doing something every day so that you're really in the mode. Next, we've said this before in the course, but drill types in order to see patterns. And this could be game types, it could be question types, it could be passage types. There are tons of patterns that run through the history of the LSAT, and the more you get deep knowledge of those patterns, the better your intuition will be and the better off you're going to be when you take the test. So we've identified certain types in a certain range of LSATs for this course. Now you should do the same for the rest of your preparation material. Go through the tests that you've reserved for preparation and drilling and identify types. Go through the logical reasoning section, identify game types, tag them, write down the type of question that you're dealing with, and then group them. So first ID types, game types, question types, and then group them the same way we did on the homework slides, and then drill them. It's extremely important that you do this because that's the way you learn. That's the way you see patterns, by doing the same sort of question with slight variation over and over and over. And don't underestimate the value of review. Once you do these drills, you have another opportunity for learning. You can go back and look at which answers you got right, which you got wrong, and take a second look at how that happened. Why did you get the wrong answers wrong? What sorts of wrong answers are you picking? What sorts of right answers do you see? What are some patterns that you see in all right answers? What are some patterns you see in many wrong answers? There is so much to learn in review that if you just do some practice tests, do some practice problems, look at the answers, see what you got right, see what you got wrong, and move on, you are leaving a huge opportunity on the table. You could even go as far as to write out explanations of questions that you do, explaining why each and every answer choice is either right or wrong. And this would be extremely valuable. It's a lot easier just to do the problems and then look at the answers, but putting in this work really, really has benefits. Next, as you go through preparing for this test, be aware of your methods. How are you going about the test? How are you going about each section? What little methods have you developed for certain game types, for reading through passages and annotating? Develop these methods and be explicit about what the methods are. It's very helpful to know something like, when I open up the reading comprehension section, the first thing I do is I scan all of the passages and I identify what passage types are there, and then I start with my science type because I'm really great at those and I can knock them out quickly. Then I move on to the history, and then I move on to the humanities, hopefully building enough time to deal with the law passage last. You need to have methods explicit and you want to be consistent about them. Timing. Plan to prepare for at least 8 weeks. That may strike some people as surprising, but the LSAT is its own thing. It really needs to be dealt with seriously, and it means so much. It is the beginning of your career in law. It is the first thing you do for law school. It is the biggest and most important part of your law school admissions package. It is the single most important determinant in the amount of scholarship money that you receive. So treat it like the super important entity that it is. Don't just think that you can throw preparation in amongst other projects and do your best. This should be as full-time of a commitment as you can manage it. I know it's not possible for everybody to study for the LSAT full-time, that there are real-world considerations that might get in the way, but make it as full-time of a commitment as you can, both in your day-to-day life and in your mind. Make this the main thing that you're focused on if you can do that. Now, with regard to how you prepare, drilling and doing other focused review is important at the beginning. This is when you're thinking about types, this is when you're working on individual sections and learning how to improve with those individual sections. Toward the end is when you want to have comprehensive practice, when you put it all together and you start taking the LSAT as a whole. Now, throughout your preparation, it's good to take practice tests to keep a marker on your progress and to just get very, very comfortable with that test and the mental marathon that goes on when you have to do that sort of work for that many hours. But toward the end is really when you want to perhaps scale back the drilling pretty seriously and focus on the mixed review. And finally and relatedly, don't worry about timing at all in the beginning. You need to understand how this test works. You need to understand how you take the test before you can take the test quickly. If you make the mistake of focusing on timing too early, you are preventing yourself from learning about the test and you are practicing bad or at least underdeveloped methods. Take a good amount of time, about the first half of your allotted prep time. So if you're doing 8 weeks, it'll be the first month, and really focus on giving yourself the time and the space to understand this test without the constraint of timing. Once you feel more comfortable, timing is important. So you need to have strategies for that. You need to start thinking about it, but put it off until you understand the test. And now let's talk a bit about advice that goes beyond the test. And when I say beyond, I don't mean after the test, like what you should do after you take the exam. I mean beyond in the sense that your LSAT prep can be about more than just understanding this particular exam. You can use this preparation time to develop skills and habits that are valuable in countless other aspects of life. And at the same time, these skills will improve your LSAT performance and also your performance in law school later on. The first point is to stress the importance of being organized and having good time management. You don't want to just practice the LSAT or drill question types whenever you feel like it. Your progress is going to be very limited if you approach preparation that way. Rather, think of yourself more like a college professor who's putting together a course and a syllabus, who has to think about the available resources, right? All the practice tests, what you have at your disposal, and also time limitations, both the amount of time between now and the test and the amount of time reasonably you can spend on preparation in a given week or day. You have to think about both your available resources and these time constraints to put together some kind of sensible plan for progressing and moving through this work. Now, the Insight worksheet can help you with this. There's a portion of the worksheet that asks you to date when you take certain practice tests, for example. And you can pre-date practice tests. You can look at the test that you've put aside, think about how much time you have, and you can pre-date practice tests so you know when you're going to be taking each test. And you can even be thinking about goals for each of those tests. You could be thinking, by the test I take on week 5, I want to be scoring blank, blank, blank. And in order to make that score, I need to up my logical reasoning score average by blank, 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 right? These are helpful goals that you can use to organize your preparation. However, I think I would move beyond just doing that on the worksheet. I would also recommend managing a calendar if you don't already. I use Google Calendar and I've had a lot of success with that, but of course there are a lot of different ways you can do this. But think of your LSAT preparation time as a hard commitment, the same way you would a college course, for instance. If you have a class and it's at a certain time, you have to be there, so you put it in your calendar. This block of time is taken up. Similarly, if you plan to prepare for 2 hours on a certain evening, schedule that in. It's a hard commitment. You have to be there. The more seriously you take your LSAT preparation, the better you're going to do. And more generally speaking, you're going to need a lot of time management skills in law school. Your hand is going to be held a lot less than it was in college, and I know it wasn't held that much in college anyway. So it's really to your benefit to get strong time management skills now, strong organizational skills now if you don't already have them. And if you do have them, how can you improve them? Next, understand how seemingly unrelated aspects of your life actually relate to your LSAT performance. You're a complicated person. You have a complicated life. There are countless factors that come together to determine how you perform on any given LSAT question, let alone a whole practice test. So the sorts of stuff I'm talking about, there is so much of it that I can't even put it all into words, but even simpler to understand things like, have you been going out a lot lately? Have you been getting enough sleep? Um, there are positive things like, do you have a lot of support from friends and family for your preparation? But then there's your diet, there's exercise, there's stress, there's all these things that come together in a given moment to see how you can perform. It's going to determine your mental performance. So the more you can identify these factors and make them conducive to performing on the LSAT, the better your performance is going to be. And you can track this stuff a little bit on the Insight worksheet. There's a comment function, and you can put comments on particular parts of the worksheet. So suppose you take a practice test and you get a score that is unusual given your other tests. You dip lower quite a bit than you have in the past. Well, think about, why did that happen? Did you take the test really late in the day when you were tired? Did you not sleep enough the night before? Are you particularly stressed out about some kind of other issue in your life? Put this in there. Give yourself that information so that you know what happened there. And similarly, if you do really well, what was going on there? What are the other life factors that got you in such good shape to take that test that time? Why were you really feeling it that day? Try to figure out the negative things and the positive things and make more of the positive things happen in your life. Make more of the positive things happen on test day, and you're going to see differences in performance. I know it sounds a little strange at first, but I really notice subtle differences in the way that I take the LSAT depending on other conditions in my life. Along those lines, even though there are countless factors that come into play, there are some major ones you can focus on to see the greatest results. I've grouped these into these four categories: diet, exercise, sleep, and stress. These are basic categories for healthy living. If you really think about your diet, are you eating healthily? Do you consume a lot of added sugar and junk food all the time, or do you eat a lot of whole foods and vegetables? Exercise, do you get some form of physical activity? There's tons of research that supports the connection between good physical condition and good mental focus and mental performance. Exercise also helps to regulate your mood, and having a calm, focused mind on the LSAT is an important thing. Do you sleep enough? I could cite studies on this. I won't waste your time. I'm sure you've heard about it, the importance of sleep for a ton of cognitive functioning, memory, focus, creativity. The difference between catching that inference on the logic game that you hadn't considered before versus missing it and being stuck in a one way of thinking about a game could be the difference in an hour of sleep. So get on a routine of sleeping enough and at the right times, wake up the same time every day. This is something that you can do immediately to improve your preparation, probably improve your life. And stress. These days, there's a lot of research coming out about the effects of stress on health and various aspects of performance. Consider what's stressing you out in life. And are these necessary stressors? Are these things that you have to worry about? And if nothing less, at least be aware of them. And remember, there are positive and negative stressors. Good things in your life, like the anticipation of going to a great law school, could be stressing you out the same way something that's less positive could. Now, getting yourself in optimal performance mode is especially important in the last 4 to 6 weeks of your preparation. You want to enter the test room in the best shape physically and mentally that you can. So in that final month and a half, I recommend you stay away from any drugs or alcohol. You focus on a healthy diet. You get regular sleep. Do all the things. Even if you don't want to live this way later, do it for now to get yourself in peak condition for really acing this test. It can really have some incredible payoffs. Next, simulate testing conditions, and I mean that broadly. When you take practice tests, which becomes an increasingly important part of your preparation the further you go on, take those tests in conditions that are as close as possible to the ones you'll be facing when you actually take the test. You don't want to be always doing practice tests laying on your bed, taking breaks in between sections, and really being relaxed about it, because that prepares you to take the test that way. And when you actually have to take the test in much different conditions, it's going to affect you, and not positively. So think about the setting. Figure out where you're going to take the test. It'll probably be in some, college or some other boring building, honestly. And when you take your practice test, try to simulate that. Go to the library, go to an empty classroom in your school if you have one, and sit there at a desk and take this practice LSAT. The time of day. You'll know what time of day your official LSAT is going to be. So take your practice test at that time of day. Our energy levels, our ability to focus, all of this changes throughout the day. If you're taking a morning test, don't take practice tests in the evening. It's just giving you an unrepresentative picture of what that test is going to be like for you. So try to take it at the same time of day. And eat the same snacks that you're going to eat during the LSAT. There is a break in the middle of the LSAT, and you're allowed to bring snacks and drinks. And I recommend you do that. This is really, like I said before, a mental marathon. It burns calories because you're working so hard in your mind to answer these questions. You need to refuel. So find a healthy snack that you can bring to the test and eat that snack when you do the practice test. It'll simulate the amount of energy you're going to have when you actually take the test. Try to keep it as close as possible. Obviously, you need to use a timer because there's going to be timing on the test. So you can go onto YouTube and look for LSAT proctors. They'll simulate conditions. They'll tell you when to start and when to end your sections, and obviously follow that. Like, you can't have extra time on the LSAT, so don't cheat yourself by taking extra time when you're practicing. Later, you can go back and review the questions you missed as part of your preparation, but when you're trying to figure out how you're actually doing on a test, stop when the timer says stop. But also, you should have a watch for the LSAT because you want to be able to very quickly look down and see exactly how much time is left in a section without looking all around the room at the clock. So it has to be an analog watch. You can't use a digital watch. That's an LSAT rule. But have that same watch and have it next to you. And although this is a later stage piece of advice, you want to practice keeping time on the LSAT the same way you're going to keep time on test day. Timing is a huge portion of the test. You deal with it in the second half of your preparation, but you better deal with it because it's necessary. So have that watch next to you, practice how you use it, and then try to simulate anything else you can think of. You just want things to be as familiar as possible on test day. This is going to help you to ease your mind and stay focused and do your best. Next, work out the relevant parts of your brain. I mean work out like the way you go to the gym workout. When I was studying for this test, it took a number of months, and I remember thinking to myself, have I become smarter? There are actual physical changes that occur in your brain when you learn and do certain activities over time. Think about what you're doing here. What are you training? You're training the ability to understand complex information, to make connection between data points, drawing inferences. Your memory and your cognition can improve as you practice this day after day, pushing yourself the same way you would push other parts of your body during physical exercise. So the way you can work out relevant parts of your brain is by supplementing your LSAT practice with hobbies that reinforce the same sorts of skills that are used on the LSAT. So I recommend some games and hobbies that involve logic, so things like Sudoku, chess, code breaker. These are all things in which you have to make inferences. Now, they're inferences of a different type. In Sudoku, you're dealing with numbers instead of the variables on the logic game, but the underlying skill is the same. Seeing what information is there and drawing logical inferences from it. That's like a muscle that you can work. And then there's a muscle you can work for reading comprehension. Find yourself some difficult reading and try to get through it. It'll increase your ability to comprehend text on the LSAT. You want to look for reading that stretches you. Struggling through it is going to build that muscle and make your reading comprehension stronger and faster. Again, this all may seem counterintuitive at first, but it works. This stuff has a real effect on how you do on the LSAT. And finally, I recommend very strongly that you invest in the skill of meditation. Even though it's gaining popularity lately, meditation is still probably the most underrated self-improvement tool around. And yeah, I know that's not technically the point, but it's a really nice side effect. You could be an LSAT master in the comfort of your room, but if you freak out on test day, what is the point? Meditation is going to help you in these 3 concrete ways. The first one is it'll help you to develop insight. You'll be able to notice patterns in the way that you deal with the LSAT through introspection. You'll be able to recognize patterns in your thinking that allow you to prepare more effectively. Meditation allows you to see more of what's going on in your mind by stopping your mind from judging too quickly, jumping to conclusions. Second, discipline. You will find that meditation can give you the discipline to make the other improvements we're talking about here when you feel tempted to do otherwise. So it really helps you to stay on your schedule, to keep pushing yourself in the direction of this optimal performance when life calls you to get it out of optimal performance. It really improves your discipline. And 3, equanimity. You're going to experience less stress and be better capable of dealing with the stress that you do face the better you get at meditation. And this is kind of what I was referring to before. The LSAT is a stressful experience. Law school is an extremely stressful experience. And you want to be as calm and focused as you can be to succeed at these things. So like I said before, you don't want to be really comfortable and happy doing the tests at home, but you just lose it on test day. You want to have that same calmness of mind that allows you to apply all of the things you've been preparing on for months when it's time to take that test. There is one test that really truly matters during this, and that's your final official one. And all the other stuff is preparation, but you need to be able to have the equanimity or the mental composure to apply that stuff when it counts. Personally, I've been meditating for about 7 years now, and I'm borderline obsessive about these other things, these other self-improvement things that we're talking about in this portion of the lesson. So please, 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 feel free to reach out if you want some help with any of this. I'd be more than happy to make this sort of life coaching, extra stuff a part of your LSAT preparation. You'll be surprised at the difference it can make both for the test and, well, beyond it.
Okay, my friends, that'll do it for now. I hope you found this course really, really helpful and that you now have a good sense of where you need to go from here in order to get yourself ready for test day. Of course, feel free to go back, revisit any portion of the course that you think will be helpful. We covered a lot in a little bit of time. It was really dense. So you'll be surprised at how useful it could be to go back and review a lot of what we've done now that you have a lot of the basic concepts under your belt. You'll kind of catch those subtleties and that expert intuition that's thrown in there throughout. But it's been a lot of fun making this course for you guys, and I hope to meet some of you in this, not in person, but pseudo person. But in the meantime, all I have to say is congratulations on making it through the course. I hope it was helpful. Thank you for entrusting at least part of your LSAT preparation to Insight LSAT and myself. And I want to wish you the absolute best of luck in your preparation going forward and in everything else you do. So, thanks a lot.